Kia's XCeed gives the Korean maker yet another option to offer buyers seeking a stylish, well-equipped compact SUV. You might feel that this bulging segment doesn't really need any further options, but Kia was determined that the Ceed family should offer one and has engineered this smart crossover contender with characteristic thoroughness.
The fourth member of Kia's Ceed family of models, this XCeed is the most important for this growing Korean brand, given the current European customer preference for crossovers of this kind. It competes in a crowded market, of course, but Kia's tried hard to tick all the boxes for someone in search of a fashionable family hatch-based SUV. Talking of ticking boxes, you might quite reasonably think that the Korean maker had already clicked on this one. XCeed Money will also buy you the brand's mid-sized Sportage SUV, which features a lot of Ceed engineering and is the company's best-selling model. But that's a little too practical and visually clunky to tempt the sort of trendy buyer Kia's targeting here, the sort of person who might otherwise be considering fashionable class contenders like Volkswagen's T-Roc, Ford's Puma and Toyota's CHR. That kind of customer's needs obviously aren't quite catered for by the three other Ceed body styles, the ordinary hatch, the Sportswagen estate and the Pro Ceed Coupe estate, nor are they quite covered by the two other crossovers Kia offers near this price point. The uber-sensible electrified Nero model, which is about the same size as an XCeed, and the compact Stonic, which, as it's based on a Rio Super Mini, is slightly smaller. Given all these other models, you might wonder whether there's much elbow room for this XCeed in Kia's range. Indeed, when the current third-generation Ceed family of models was being planned, this body style didn't figure in the company's thinking. But then the SUV crossover market exploded to the point where it now accounts for over half of all compact cars sold in Europe. Within that segment, the biggest current growth area is for overtly style-conscious family hatch-based models, and the Korean maker realised that it didn't actually have much that directly fitted that remit. So the XCeed was developed in record time, positioned slightly differently from the Sportage as a CUV or crossover utility vehicle, and produced in numbers undergirding an expectation that it would be the Ceed model line's best-selling variant. Given that background, you might expect a bit of a rush job here, essentially a Ceed hatch with body cladding and a bit of extra attitude. But more than that has been delivered. Bar the doors, every body panel is new. There's a raised ride height with suspension changes to match, and the interior showcases Kia's latest infotainment technology. To suit the current zeitgeist, there's a plug-in version too. It all sounds quite promising. Time to put this car to the test. Until quite recently, if you bought any kind of SUV or crossover, you bought a car that would ride more firmly than the more conventional family model it was based upon. That was due to the stiffer suspension settings needed to counter the extra body roll you'll inevitably get from a higher riding vehicle. So how is it that this XCeed manages to be the most comfort-orientated member of the Ceed family? It's quite an accomplishment. Drill down into the detail and you discover how Kia has achieved this by building in hydraulic bump stops to the front suspension. These boost comfort and control so much that instead of firming up the normal Ceed model's damping to create this crossover variant, the engineers have actually been able to soften the springs by 7% at the front and by 4% at the back. You'll really only notice this when thumping through potholes and going over speed humps, but when that happens, you might well note the unusual suppleness of the car's ride, which the Korean maker has managed to achieve without significantly adding to the level of body roll exhibited by other Ceed body styles. We'll talk a little more about dynamics later, but at this point you'll probably be most interested to hear about the engine choices on offer. Despite the coupe style looks championed here, there's nothing especially exciting in terms of power output. There rarely is on a car of this kind, though Kia could have changed that by offering UK XCeed buyers the potent Ceed GT hot hatch derived 1.6 litre T GDI petrol engine that develops 201 brake brake horsepower and is available on this crossover in other markets. In the absence of that unit, the fastest power plant you can have in this car is the 1.4-litre T GDI engine, familiar from quite a few other Kia and Hyundai models. This has 4 cylinders, puts out 138 brake horsepower, and manages 60 miles an hour from rest in 9.1 seconds en route to 124 miles an hour. That's if you go for the 6-speed manual gearbox that nearly all XCeeds come fitted with as standard. Exclusive to the 1.4T GDI engine is the additional option of Kia's smooth shifting 7-speed DCT dual clutch transmission, which comes with an extra drive mode select sport mode that alters throttle, steering and gear shift timings. A little disappointingly, there's no kind of drive mode system available on any manual gearbox version of this car. Not that you really need it, and if you're wanting a petrol XCeed model, then to be honest, unless your lifestyle demands an auto gearbox or a particularly urgent driving style, you probably don't especially need the 1.4T GDI engine in this car either. Our usual basic advice to Ceed buyers, which again holds true here, is to try the entry-level 1-litre T GDI petrol power plant first, because you may find it's actually all you need. That 3-cylinder 118 bhp unit is an efficient and eager little thing, and it's vastly superior to the old-tech 1.6 GDI engine that at the time of this test in early 2020 you'd have to have if you went for an equivalent entry-level petrol version of Kia's other mid-sized SUV at this price point, the Sportage. However, be aware that the tiny 998cc T GDI powertrain is one that in our experience has to be worked quite hard to want to get you moving with any kind of real speed. Doubtless the quoted performance stats for this variant, 60 miles an hour from rest in 10.9 seconds on the way to 115, are achievable, but you'd really have to thrash the engine a bit to replicate that claim. The other 3 engine options available in this car will appeal to those who have running costs uppermost in their minds. We'll start with the diesel offering, which, as on any other Ceed model, gives you 2 versions of Kia's current generation SmartStream 1.6-litre CRDI unit. The base spec option is a 114 bhp version of this power plant, which performs very similarly to the 1-litre petrol variant, managing 60 miles an hour in 11 seconds en route to 118 miles an hour. XCeed diesel buyers wanting a better level of trim will have to have this engine in the uprated 134 bhp form we're trying here. There isn't really any other reason why you'd upgrade to the more powerful version of this diesel unit, because it doesn't actually take you much faster than the entry-level CRDI engine. Both variants of this power plant put out the same 280 Nm torque figure, and the performance stats, if you go for it in 134 bhp form, are only very marginally improved over those of the base unit. For the record, they're quoted as rest to 60 miles an hour in 10.2 seconds on the way to 122 miles an hour. The final engine option you can have in this car is the most sophisticated one, Kia's PHEV petrol plug-in hybrid powertrain. In theory, it's the most sophisticated one anyway, though from a brief look at the technical stats of this unit, you might initially wonder about that because it's fundamentally based around the old-tech 1.6-litre GDI petrol engine we mentioned earlier, and the now outdated 6-speed version of Kia's DCT auto gearbox. Thankfully, the electrified elements bolted into this combination are a lot more cutting edge. A 44.5 kilowatt electric motor mated to an 8.9 kilowatt hour battery pack that, when fully charged, can deliver a 36-mile WLTP rated electric driving range. This powertrain's total output is 139 bhp with 265 Nm of torque, hence Kia's confidence in offering a standard trailer pack with this variant. An XCeed PHEV can tow up to 1.3 tonnes compared to either a tonne or 1.2 tonnes for other variants. Rest to 60 miles an hour in the plug-in model occupies 9.4 seconds on the way to 119 miles an hour. Enough on engines. Earlier we touched on the drive dynamics in play here, which are very much aided by the suspension tweaks we mentioned earlier. And by the way, that Kia has developed the handling of 3rd generation models in its Ceed family. The stiff K2 platform plays a big part in this, as does the properly sophisticated multi-link rear springing rather than the cruder torsion beam rear suspension setup that some competitors still use. Yes, the XCeed delivers a fraction more body roll through the bends than you'd get from the conventional hatch version of this car, but you'd have to be pressing on pretty hard to really notice it, at which point you'll also be aided by a torque vectoring system that lightly dabs the front brakes to help tuck the nose in and ease you urgently through the corner. If Kia had also been able to deliver a slightly more feelsome steering rack, you'd be able to really enjoy driving this car. As it is, the feel through the helm remains slightly distant, despite changes made to the power steering motor of this crossover variant, aimed at delivering a quicker initial response to steering inputs. A typical customer of this would-be SUV won't care much about that, or about the fact that, as usual with cars in this class, there's no four-wheel drive option and off-road capability is pretty much non-existent, though ride height of this body style is raised slightly to 184mm if, as here, your XCeed rides on larger 18-inch rims. Of more relevance to likely buyers will be the sophisticated camera-driven features that, like other manufacturers, Kia's increasingly building into its more mainstream models. With the priciest spec level, you even get a degree of autonomous driving tech, courtesy of a lane-following assist system that in highway cruising conditions seamlessly controls your acceleration, braking and steering. For ordinary versions of this car, though, the technology's found in more tactile things. You might even bond with one, and for a family-orientated Kia, that's a big step forward. Increasingly, this is now what private buyers want to see a Focus or Astra Class C-segment family hatch looking like. Yes, the ordinary models still sell in their hundreds of thousands, which is why Kia still offers one in the form of its conventional Ceed hatch. But if you had a choice, you'd probably opt for a more crossover-orientated design like this XCeed every time, which is why the Korean maker expects this lightly SUV-orientated contender to be the best-selling member of the Ceed family of models. Not much has been carried over from other variants, only the doors in the creation of this sporty swept-back silhouette. Design chief Gregory Guillaume has reimagined what a Ceed hatch can be from an urban crossover perspective, sculpting a relatively long bonnet and a steeply angled fastback tailgate, and extending the overhangs over the conventional hatch by 25mm at the front and by 60mm at the rear. It's all rather smart and, in our view, actually very similar to what you'd get from a much pricier premium badged model in this segment, like, say, an Audi Q3 Sportback. In keeping with the crossover remit, there are silver roof rails plus black plastic-clad side sills and wheel arches, but nothing too heavy-handed. Ride height has increased too, to 172mm on base versions with 16-inch wheels, or to 184mm if, as here, your XCeed rides on larger 18-inch rims. The front end is also quite different from anything previously seen with any sort of Ceed badge. The headlamps have been restyled with this model line's usual ice cube style LED daytime running light signature, now sitting within a more angular shape, topped by a turn signal that flows back over the more prominent wheel arches. At the same time, each of the black corner cutout panels gains a silver fin, connecting it to this more assertive lower air intake. Just above it, this interpretation of the brand's tiger nose style front grille also gets a bit more pavement presence. At the rear, slim tail lamps emit a distinctive LED lighting signature that, when viewed from certain angles, appears to spear forward into the shoulders of the car. The heavily creased lines running horizontally across the stylised tailgate and rear bumper aim to give the car a more stable posture and emphasise its 26mm width increase over a standard Ceed 5-door, And this sporty, metallic-coloured lower diffuser valance panel surrounds these trapezoidal exhaust outlets. But of course, underneath all this tinsel, things are as conventional as you might think they would have to be, given this XCeed model's relatively short design gestation period. So this car rides on the same K2 platform as any other Ceed, with the same wheelbase length and nearly all the same engineering. Time to take a seat up front, which is slightly easier to do than it would be in an ordinary Ceed because the seat hip point has been raised by 44mm, making it easier to step in and out. At the wheel, differences in cabin architecture over any other Ceed variant are relatively few. The raised ride height does mean you sit a fraction higher, but the feel isn't especially commanding. If you want that, you'll prefer the brand's more SUV-like Sportage model. Typical crossover buyers who want an easy transition from something more conventional may not mind this, and they should be right at home with Kia's contemporary cabin architecture, which sees this sculpted centre console angled slightly towards the driver. It's just a pity that it's all a bit dark and dour. The design team have tried to lift things with triple stitching on top of the dash and various bits of silver and piano black trim, but it's simply not enough to make a mainstream trimmed XCeed variant, a car like this one, feel interesting and engaging as a piece of urban crossover design, which is what it's supposed to be. It actually doesn't take much to achieve this, as Kia itself proved by equipping the pricey limited run first edition version of this model with yellow fascia inserts and yellow trim stitching. We appreciate that not everyone wants this kind of extrovert finish, but for the significant number that will, the brand's failure to offer this kind of trimming option further down the range may cost it some sales. Another important thing you only get at the very top of the range and can't add in further down the lineup is a digital instrument cluster display screen with virtual dials, which again is something you can option into mainstream versions of some key competitors. And that's a pity because Kia's 12.3-inch Supervision cluster display instrument binnacle TFT setup is one of the better ones out there. Lesser XCeeds simply get two conventional gauges separated by a central trip computer screen. That'll be either black and white and 3.5 inches in size with base 2 spec, or as here, 4.2 inches in size and colour if you've gone for a mid-range 3 spec model. This can show you everything from a digital speedo to fuel economy readouts and a compass. Try and stretch to that middle ranking trim level if you can, because it gets you the thing we most like about this cabin, the brand's latest 10.25-inch touchscreen satellite navigation with telematics centre dash display. In recent years, Kia's infotainment technology has never featured much that's particularly cutting edge, but this system's a real step forward. It doesn't feature the kind of useful lower rotary controller you'd get on, say, a rival Mazda CX-30 or BMW X1, but otherwise we're very impressed by this much improved setup. If you're familiar with models from the brand featuring the older 8-inch colour touchscreen audio display, which continues on the base 2-spec version of this model, the first thing you'll notice about this monitor is that it allows you to combine 3 different elements on the screen at the same time. So, for instance, the driver can follow navigational instructions, while the front passenger selects their radio station and uses Kia Live services to monitor the latest weather forecast. We mentioned Kia Live. That package is more sophisticated here thanks to an incorporated eSIM chip that retrieves and updates all kinds of data as you drive. Things like traffic updates and information on parking spaces and fuel stations on your route. Plus, the touchscreen satellite navigation with telematics package is also integrated with the company's latest UVO Connect telematics technology, which allows a super useful feature we've not so far seen on any other car we've tested: the ability to connect 2 phones via Bluetooth at once. So one passenger can be music streaming, while another mirrors a phone app onto the centre dash screen via the standard Apple CarPlay or Android Auto connectivity. The UVO Connect app also allows you to select a destination on your phone and send it to the car's standard navigation system in advance of your journey, so you won't have to waste time keying it in before you start. Aside from media connectivity and infotainment, most of the main boxes have been properly ticked. The horizontally orientated fascia giving the cabin quite an airy and spacious feel. It's split into two sections, a lower area housing controls for audio, heating and ventilation, and an upper region dominated by that centre touchscreen, another from the school of interior styling that thinks modern buyers want the impression of an iPad sprouting from the middle of the dash. Getting comfortable is easy thanks to plenty of seat and wheel adjustment, though lumbar support is missing from the driver's seat of entry-level variants. Frontward visibility is expansive thanks to these thin A-pillars. Not so good though is rearward visibility thanks to the small rear screen and thick pillars behind the rear doors that block your view throughout tight parking manoeuvres. Kia's apparently aware of this, which is why a rear view camera is included across the range and rear parking sensors come as standard above entry-level trim. Cabin practicality is reasonable, though the glove box and the door pockets could be bigger. On the plus side, Kia has at least provided a lidded area where you can charge your phone away from prying eyes. This compartment ahead of the gear stick, which contains 12-volt, aux-in and twin USB sockets. The brand's also remembered to include an overhead compartment for your sunglasses, and below the gear lever, a pair of cup holders is covered by this ratcheting sliding top. To the right of that, this mid-range model provides an electronic handbrake switch with a small coin tray just behind it. Volume variants dispense with that arrangement in favour of the usual conventional lever. There's also a shelf at the bottom of the centre stack that on plusher models incorporates a wireless charging mat. You get ticket clips on the sun visors, and there's a large storage box between the seats that's spacious and deep but lacks any interior connectivity points. Overall, there's really not too much to criticise here because by and large the detail stuff's been really well thought through. So build quality from the Slovakian factory is tight, much tighter than on recent Fords we've tested, for instance. Latches operate with a quality click, handles slide back with a damped sigh, and you get thoughtful touches like discreet lighting around the USB and aux-in points. But, of course, it isn't perfect. There are more buttons than we're used to seeing in a cabin of this kind these days. And cheaper plastic panels have been used in areas like the base of the centre console. And you might object to the fake plastic stitching that features on the fascia top and the door cards. At least the Korean brand has dispensed with the chintzy little musical chime that used to be one of its staple cabin features, and on some other mainstream Kias activates as you exit the car. An irritating Asian market-orientated fitment that has no place on what's supposed to be a Europeanised model. Right, let's take a seat in the rear. Now, dimensionally, this XCeed model sits almost precisely between an ordinary Ceed hatch and the brand's mid-sized Sportage SUV, being 85mm longer and 48mm taller than the Ceed, but 90mm shorter and 150mm lower than the Sportage. What will that translate to in terms of rear seat space? Well, let's pull back this wide opening door and take a look. Essentially, it feels much like a Ceed hatch, which, if you haven't tried one of those, means pluses and minuses. Space for your legs and head is only average by class standards, but knee room is aided by these scalloped seat backs, and the notably low centre transmission tunnel means that if need be, it's easier to fit 3 adults back here than it would be in some rivals. Unfortunately, there's nothing particularly clever provided back here. Some cars in this class offer sliding seat bases, others give you reclining seat backs, and there's none of that in this Kia. The brand doesn't even offer you any connectivity ports back here, or the option of adding any in, which seems a bit backward in this day and age. Still, 3 kids should be perfectly happy here. Practical touches include small door bins with even smaller incorporated bottle holders, plus Seat back pockets, twin central vents and overhead coat hooks. There are no overhead reading lights, but twin cup holders feature in this fold-down centre armrest. ISOFIX child seat fastenings feature as usual on the two outer seating positions. We'll finish, as usual, with a look at the boot, which is 426 litres in size, which is 31 litres larger than an ordinary Ceed hatch, but 65 smaller than a Kia Sportage and almost 200 smaller than a cheaper Ceed Sportswagen Estate. That might matter to you. Probably it won't. Your dealer will be keen to point out that this cargo area is no smaller than the space you'd get in key competitors like Nissan's Qashqai and Mazda's CX-30. And it's a significant 49 litres bigger than you'd get in a class rival like Toyota's CHR. This area is accessed by a rather high loading lip, but it's deep and regularly shaped. Helpful touches include a couple of bag hooks, this left-hand retaining strap, and 4 chromed tie-down points, plus on the left-hand side you get this 12-volt socket too. The useful dual-height boot floor that's absent from some rivals is here supplied across the range as standard, and most models include a space-saver spare wheel beneath it too. If you need space for longer items, you'll be disappointed to find that there's no ski hatch and that the useful 40-20-40 split for the rear bench that you'd get in some other cars in this segment is here limited to the priciest XCeed variants that few buyers will want to stretch to. For bigger items, you'll need to flatten the 60-40 backrest, which frees up 1,378 litres of total fresh air. If that's not enough, your dealer will point you towards the alternative Sportage and Ceed Sportswagen models we just mentioned. XCeed pricing from launch was pitched in the £20,000 to £30,000 bracket, common to this kind of family hatch-based crossover SUV. In case you were wondering, that means a premium of just under £2,000 over a standard Ceed hatch. And most XCeeds will be sold with either base spec 2-level trim or the mid-range 3-level grade we have here, but Kia also offers a plush top-spec model known as First Edition immediately after launch and as 4-spec thereafter. If you viewed our driving experience section, you'll know there are 5 engine choices, 3 petrols and 2 diesels, all of them familiar from other Ceed family models. For many buyers, the base 1 litre TGDI 118 bhp petrol may well suffice. There's a premium of £1,250 to pay if you want the direct alternative, the lower powered 114 bhp version of the 1.6 CRDI SmartStream diesel. Either way, manual transmission is mandatory, as it is with the more powerful 134 bhp version of that same CRDI diesel engine, a unit only available with 3-spec trim, which, by the way, is what we're testing here, a package that'll need a budget of around £25,000. Your other XCeed are petrol-powered and deliver the option of automatic transmission. The conventional green pump-fueled choice for those shopping further up the range is the brand's 1.4T GDI 138 bhp engine, which for £1,100 extra is available with Kia's 7-speed DCT auto gearbox if you don't want the stick-shift manual. The final option is a petrol plug-in model, which pairs a 1.6-litre GDI engine with an electric motor and 8.9 kilowatt-hour battery pack to produce 139 bhp. This PHEV variant comes with either 3-level or top-level trim, and with the lesser spec, prices from launch kicked off from just under £31,000, which might need a bit of thought before sign-off, given the £5,000 premium this represents over the faster diesel variant we're trying here. Before we get into competitor comparisons across the XCeed range, let's first position this car for you within Kia's own lineup. Now, we've already mentioned the £2,000 premium this crossover requires over an ordinary Ceed hatch. You might also want to know that an XCeed is around £1,000 pricier than the brand's Ceed Sportswagen Estate. Comparisons with the sportier, more coupe-like Pro Ceed estate are harder to make, as that car comes only with the more powerful engines and plusher trim levels. But if your XCeed spend is going to be in the £25,000 to £30,000 bracket, and you want either the faster diesel or the 1.4 litre T GDI petrol unit, then a Pro Ceed might also appeal as an alternative. There are also three, perhaps more obvious, crossover SUV Kia products to pitch against this one. A comparably engined version of the slightly smaller Stonic model will save you around £3,000 over an XCeed. Think in terms of needing around £2,000 more to have the more SUV-like Sportage, and you need around £4,000 more than you'd pay for an XCeed if you wanted Kia's other similarly sized C-segment crossover, the Niro Hybrid. Enough with XCeed range structure observations and comparisons with other Kia models. The Korean brand hopes that a potential XCeed customers won't be someone who would have bought another Kia, but instead someone who would have otherwise chosen a crossover or SUV from another brand entirely. So, what about comparisons with family hatch-based crossover SUVs from other manufacturers in this overcrowded segment? Well, we'll start by saying that there's not really much point in telling you that more compact models in the small SUV sector with lower capacity engines, Nissan Dukes, Renault Captures and so on, will cost you a lot less. Of course they will. You're getting less in return. You won't pay a lot less, though, for the Volkswagen Group entrants in the smallest part of the crossover class, Skoda's Kamiq, Seat's Arona and Volkswagen's T-Cross, and a comparably specified Audi Q2, which isn't a lot bigger than the three cars just mentioned, would actually cost you slightly more than Kia is asking here. If you're looking at an XCeed, though, which probably means you rejected the notion of either a conventional family hatch or a small estate, then we think it's more likely that a proper competitor point of comparison would lie with two other groups of compact crossover models. The first group we'll brief you on are class contenders that use super mini platforms, but extended ones so that they can offer virtually as much cabin space as is on offer here. Here we're thinking of models like Suzuki's SX4 S-Cross and Mitsubishi's ASX, which cost a fraction less than an XCeed, and Ford's Puma and Honda's HR-V, which cost about the same as this Kia. Toyota's CHR is also a car of this kind, but costs a little more, from around £25,000 upwards, because it's a full hybrid. The other group of rivals are crossovers that, like this Kia, use a fully fledged family hatchback platform. Now, you're probably not going to be particularly interested in an XCeed if you're the kind of person who would otherwise have been considering something in this category that's similarly sized and priced, but slightly clunkier and more SUV-like, say a Hyundai Tucson, a Skoda Karoq, a Vauxhall Grandland X, or a SsangYong Corando, or, in the case of slightly more expensive XCeed variants, a Volkswagen Tiguan, a Mazda CX-5, a Citroën C5 Aircross, or maybe a Jeep Compass. Those are cars more naturally targeted by the Kia Sportage SUV we mentioned earlier. A potential XCeed customer is more likely to be attracted by similarly priced, similarly sized contenders like Nissan's Qashqai, Seat's Atika, a Renault Kadjar, a Volkswagen T-Roc, a Mazda CX-30, a Mini Countryman, or, in the case of slightly more expensive XCeed variants, a Peugeot 3008, a Subaru XV, or a Ford Kuga. You might also want to consider a similarly priced Ford Focus Active. And that's really only an ordinary Focus with a few crossover add-ons, but it does have the advantage that it can be ordered in more spacious estate form. If you're wondering about comparisons with similarly sized premium badged crossover models of this kind, cars like BMW's X1, the Mercedes GLA, Audi's Q3, Jaguar's E-Pace, the Range Rover Evoque, Volvo's XC40 or the Lexus UX, well, with those kind of SUVs, it's difficult to get much of what you'll want for less than around £30,000, which means that the XCeed range tops out just where the model lineups for SUVs of that sort begin. So, there are all your options, and lots of them, aren't there? If, having considered these alternatives, you conclude that it is an XCeed that you really want, then you're going to need to know just how generous Kia has been with standard spec spec. So let's take a look at that now. The Volume 2 spec trim level, which was the range entry point at the launch of this car, gives you a pretty reasonable amount. So tick off 16-inch alloy wheels, LED bifunction projection headlights, projection front fog lights, tinted glass, silver roof rails, automatic headlights, LED rear lamps and an alarm, plus neat touches like a front wiper de-icer, and you get a space saver spare wheel on most models too. Inside, as you'd expect, there's air conditioning, leather trim for the steering wheel, gear knob and handbrake, and driver's seat height adjustment. There's also cruise control with a speed limiter, a variable height boot floor, a luggage area 12-volt socket, and some significant electronic camera-driven safety features that some more budget-minded rivals will charge you more for. We'll talk about those in more detail in a few minutes. Infotainment at this level is taken care of by an 8-inch colour touchscreen audio display, your access point for a 7-speaker DAB audio setup, a reversing camera and Apple CarPlay or Android Auto smartphone mirroring, plus Bluetooth with voice recognition and music streaming. This infotainment setup also comes complete with navigation and access to the range of Kia connected services that the brand provides in association with TomTom. Things like traffic, weather, parking, fuel station and speed camera data. What about if you can afford to spend a little more on your XCeed? Well, if so, you'll find yourself looking at a mid-range 3-spec variant like the one we have here. The key extra feature at this level in the range is Kia's new era 10.25-inch touchscreen satellite navigation with telematics system, which has its own eSIM chip to retrieve and update live data during a drive. It also incorporates the company's latest UVO Connect telematics technology, which allows you to send route directions to your car before your journey, will enable you to check the location of your vehicle at any time, and will allow occupants to Bluetooth connect 2 devices into the car at once. With a 3-spec XCeed like this, you also gain features like dual zone air conditioning, rear parking sensors, power folding mirrors, smart key keyless entry, faux leather upholstery, heated front seats with powered lumbar support, a heated steering wheel, an auto defogging system for the windscreen, an electronic parking brake, a USB fast charger in the centre console, an auto dimming rear view mirror, and a 4.2-inch SuperVision colour cluster display in the instrument binnacle. A 3-spec PHEV XCeed model additionally gains faux leather door trim and a sliding centre armrest, but loses the space saver spare wheel in lieu of a tyre mobility kit. At the top of the range, Kia's usual new model marketing strategy continues here. Basically, this sees a generously specified first edition level of trim offered for the first year of production, which is then subsequently replaced by a near identically specified trim level bearing 4-spec badging thereafter. At the time of this test in early 2020, that meant the XCeed range was topped off by a first edition model complete with niceties like a panoramic glass sunroof, an 8-speaker JBL premium sound system with Clarify technology, powered front seats with memory settings, a powered tailgate, yellow stitched trim and upholstery, a choice of premium paint colours, aluminium pedals, a wireless phone charger, front parking sensors, a smart park assist system to automatically steer you into parallel or perpendicular spaces. In addition, the rear seats at this level are heated, fold down remotely and feature a more convenient 40-20-40 split. There are also some camera-driven safety elements fitted at this level that you can't get further down the range, and we'll cover those in a moment. And from launch, you needed first edition spec to get Kia's first digital instrument cluster. The brand calls this 12.3-inch TFT setup its SuperVision cluster display, a feature that unfortunately can't be optionally added in lower down the range. The PHEV first edition variant gets ventilated front seats and smart cruise control with stop-and-go functionality too. For some reason, that PHEV first edition variant gets a trailer pack too, which comes with wiring, a BLBC motor, a cooler and a prepared connector. On to options. Now, as usual with Kia, there aren't that many. The brand believing that customers will prefer to move up a trim level rather than go box ticking. Your dealer will, though, sell you practical items like a boot tidy bag, a cargo area trunk organising bag, a trunk liner, a dog guard or cargo separator, a protection foil to cover the top of the rear bumper from scratches, and a coat hanger to go on the front seat backs. You might also want a mudguard kit, a dash cam, a safety first aid kit, a fire extinguisher and a luggage carry hook you can hang your takeaways on in the cabin. You might well want to add roof bars, onto which you can then add a roof box, or carriers for skis and bicycles. For the cabin, you could also specify extra front area illumination and a rear seat entertainment cradle so that iPads and tablets can be attached to the rear of the front head restraints to entertain those in the back. As for extra aesthetic touches, well, you can add 18-inch alloy wheels, silver door mirror caps, mid-level side body mouldings and trimming lines for the trunk sill and tailgate. And finally, for the really extrovert, there are body decal stripes in black, white or red, which won't help you when the time comes to sell. We'll also mention that on 2 and 3 spec models, you can specify classier, premium paint colours too. Let's finish with a perusal of the safety stuff on offer, the area in which the specification of this car has taken arguably its biggest step forward. Now, while some other rivals only fit the choicest high-tech camera-driven features on the very priciest variants, Kia gives you most of what you'll need right across the range. Its LKA or lane keeping assist setup, for example. This will warn you if the car is unintentionally wandering over a road marking before gently steering your XCeed back to where it ought to be. And as you now expect from a car in this class, there's a standard forward safety active assist autonomous emergency braking system. Kia badges its technology FCA or forward collision avoidance assist. As usual, this is the kind of camera-driven package that, as you drive, scans the road ahead, searching for potential collision hazards. If one's detected, you'll be warned, and if you don't respond or aren't able to, the brakes will automatically be applied to decrease the severity of any resulting accident. A little annoyingly, though, the FCA setup will only specifically detect pedestrians and cyclists if you've opted for pricey first edition or 4-spec trim. That capability should be incorporated into the standard system and can be if you pay your dealer extra at point of purchase. It's interesting to note that the Euro NCAP 5-star safety rating awarded to this car only applies to variants fitted with this extra cost feature. Other standard Ceed safety features are more familiar. There are twin front, side and curtain airbags, though no driver's knee bag, plus ISOFIX rear child seat fastenings and active front head restraints that prevent whiplash. As usual with the Kia, there's the brand's VSM or Vehicle Stability Management System, which ensures stability when braking and cornering by controlling the car's ESC or Electronic Stability Control System if it detects a loss of traction. In addition, as usual with a family hatch of this kind, there's tyre pressure monitoring and hill start assist control to stop the car rolling backwards as you pull away on inclines. As you'd also now expect, in this segment, the ABS anti-lock brakes are aided in panic stops by a brake assist feature, plus an emergency stop signal that flashes the hazard lights to warn following motorists. In addition, a standard DAW or driver attention warning system monitors for signs of fatigue and will prompt you to take a break during a journey. A readout in the instrument binnacle tells you when your last break was. There's also high beam assist to automatically dip your headlights for you at night, and a speed limit information function that pictures speed signs as you pass, displaying them on the screen in the instrument binnacle. From the start of this XCeed model's sales life, it was only the premium-priced first edition models that got the most advanced camera-driven safety features developed for this design. These include blind spot collision warning, which works on the move to stop you from dangerously pulling out if there's a vehicle in your blind spot, and rear cross traffic alert, which is there when you're backing out to let you know if any vehicles are approaching from the side. Plus, the speed limit information function we just mentioned gains intelligent functionality, which allows it to automatically adapt to the car's speed limiter if set to the prevailing limit. This, in theory, means that you'll never get zapped by a speed camera again. A rather nice thought. The headline piece of safety camera technology at the top of the range is the brand's LFA, or Lane Following Assist system, which can only be fitted to automatic models. This detects road markings to keep the car in the centre of its lane on the highway and controls acceleration, braking and steering to deliver at least a limited form of self-driving tech. It wasn't long ago that choosing a crossover over an ordinary family hatchback carried quite a penalty in terms of running cost efficiency. What's helped to drive sales in this segment in recent times is the fact that this is no longer true. There'll always be a slight fuel and CO2 downside with any SUV-orientated model, of course. Greater weight and boxier aerodynamics see to that. But as long as it's marginal, customers in this class won't mind too much. And that's certainly the case here. Kia has kept the weight increase of this XCeed model over a normal Ceed hatch to just 20 kilograms, which is why the running cost downside here over that ordinary model is limited to no more than around 5%. Let's get to the figures. The most popular XCeed variant will be the 1-litre TGDI petrol model, which manages up to 45.6 mpg on the WLTP combined cycle and 124 grams per kilometre of NEDC-rated CO2. It would take too long to detail all the engineering intricacies of this little 998cc three-cylinder power plant. Things like the integrated exhaust manifold, which lowers exhaust temperatures, cleaning emissions, and the dual thermostat split cooling system, which reduces friction, improving efficiency. But what you need to know is that what's delivered here is a reasonably class-competitive showing. The fuel figure identically matching what you get from an entry-level petrol-powered Mazda CX-30 and bettering what you'd manage in a base petrol-powered Nissan Qashqai. The CO2 figure isn't quite so strong, but it's only a few percentage points off the class standard. If you're minded to move up to Kia's mainstream four-cylinder engine, the 1.4T GDI unit, then there's only a marginal difference in fuel consumption, but more of a drop when it comes to CO2. For a manual 1.4T GDI model, the figures are 42.8 mpg for WLTP combined cycle fuel economy and 142 grams per kilometre for NEDC-rated CO2. With the auto gearbox fitted, this engine is slightly less frugal at 40.9 mpg, but marginally cleaner, 134 grams per kilometre. With either transmission, we'd expect an average of around 30 miles per gallon in everyday driving. What about the diesel derivatives? Well, the SmartStream U3 Series 1.6-litre CRDI diesel used here is certainly quite a big step forward from the brand's earlier black pump-fueled engines. The Koreans had to redesign this power plant to meet the stricter Euro 6D emissions standard, at which point they took the opportunity to thoroughly upgrade it with selective catalytic reduction active emissions control technology that uses a urea additive that virtually eradicates all NOx emissions. If you've opted for a diesel version of this car, you'll need to top up this additive in a special tank every 5,000 miles. Plus, as with all Ceed models, there's standard ISG or intelligent stop and go technology that cuts the engine when you don't need it, stuck in traffic or waiting at the lights. Bear in mind though that it won't function after a cold start or if the air conditioner is working particularly hard. Anyway, the figures see a 114 brake horsepower diesel XCeed returning 52.3 mpg on the WLTP cycle and 109 grams per kilometre of NEDC rated CO2. Curiously, the 134 bhp version of this engine, which is what we're testing here, is fractionally more frugal at 53.3 mpg, but slightly dirtier at 116 grams per kilometre. Finally, let's consider the merits of the PHEV petrol plug-in model, which, as you might have heard earlier in this film, combines a 1.6-litre GDI petrol engine and a 6-speed DCT auto gearbox with a 44.5 kilowatt electric motor. To be frank, the upfront price premium demanded by this variant, it costs £5,500 more than a comparably equipped 1.4T GDI Auto model, looks quite hard to justify. But you might manage that if you were to regularly make use of the 36-mile WLTP rated electric driving range made possible by this variant's 8.9 kilowatt-hour battery pack, located alongside the 37-litre fuel tank beneath the rear bench. Recharging to 100% takes 2 hours and 15 minutes using a 240-volt 3.3 kilowatt AC charger. With the PHEV XCeed, owners can use the centre dash touchscreen to preset charging times and to locate nearby public charging points. Plus, the display can show powertrain data, remaining battery charge levels and energy usage graphics. As for the fantasy figures delivered by the PHEV variant, well, you're looking at just 33 grams per kilometre of CO2, which is why this petrol-electric model qualifies for free vehicle excise duty for the first year of ownership. In comparison, a conventional 1.4T GDI derivative would attract first-year VED taxation of £210. Kia couldn't give us a WLTP fuel figure for an XCeed PHEV, but the NEDC rated reading is quoted at 201.8 miles per gallon on the combined cycle. What else might you need to know? Likely residual values? Well, they're a lot higher than they used to be on mainstream Kia models. Independent experts reckon that after 3 years and 36,000 miles, an XCeed 1.6 CRDI 134 bhp model with mid-range 3 spec trim, a car like this one, will still be worth £9,950 or 40% of its original value, which is pretty class competitive. Across the range, the figures vary between 39 and 42%. To give you a segment-specific take on that, you're looking at a better depreciation reading than you'd get from, say, a Ford Focus Active, but not quite as good a showing as might be achieved by a Toyota CHR. When it comes to servicing, the petrol variants need regular garage visits every 12 months or 10,000 miles, while the diesel doubles that mileage to 20,000. And as usual with a Kia, you can budget ahead with prepaid servicing plans, courtesy of the brand's Care 3 package that offers a fixed price deal covering your first 3 garage visits. A package that can be extended to include 5 visits if you go for the upgraded Care 3 Plus option. In addition, a customer can now purchase services up to and including the 7th one, so matching the full length of the warranty. Whatever plan you go for, you can also bundle an MOT test in with it, and on that basis, you'll have the peace of mind of knowing that virtually all maintenance costs will probably have been covered for the entire time that your name will be on the logbook. An even stronger buying incentive is much trumpeted 7-year, 100,000-mile warranty, which, like the Care 3 servicing packages, is transferable to future owners. However, it is worth pointing out that the warranty only offers unlimited mileage for the first 3 years you own the car. Thereafter, you'll have a 100,000 mileage restriction. If in future the car is sold through a Kia used approved dealership when less than 18 months old or with less than 18,000 miles on the clock, the warranty will be topped up to match that of a new model. You might also want to note that roadside assistance cover is limited to 1 year, but you do get a long 12-year bodywork warranty. As for insurance, well, bear in mind that groupings for base level 2 spec trim are quite high because of this spec level's lack of pedestrian detection integrated into the forward collision assist autonomous braking system. A 2 spec variant is rated at Group 15E with a 1-litre T GDI petrol engine, or 16E with a 114 bhp 1.6-litre CRDI diesel. Move to the mid-range 3 level of spec that does have full autonomous braking capability, and you're looking at Group 12E for the 1-litre T GDI model, Group 15E for this 1.6 CRDI 134 bhp diesel variant, and Group 16E for the 1.4T GDI petrol derivative. The top first edition or 4 spec 1.4T GDI petrol model is priciest to insure, rated at Group 18A, which is ironic given all the extra accident prevention camera-driven safety systems that are fitted at this level. Sometimes You wonder what sort of world the insurance companies are living in. Life is certainly a great deal more interesting for someone wanting to buy a family hatchback-sized car these days. Say what you like about the current SUV craze, but it's certainly delivered up much more of a want one factor when it comes to the purchase of a C-segment model like this. And the XCeed delivers this with the kind of smart styling you'd normally expect to have to stretch to a premium brand to get. Of course, there are crossover buyers who'll want more powerful engines or a classier cabin than this car can offer. But we'd suggest quite a number will be very satisfied with this Kia's impressive quality, well-judged practicality and sensible pricing. True, the asking figures may be a little higher than you might expect from a South Korean manufacturer, but don't judge them until you've tried the product. A confident design from a very confident brand. We're pleasantly surprised by the extent to which Kia has been minded to do the job properly here. The brand could have just injected the standard Ceed hatch with a bit of a crossover vibe, as for instance Ford did in tweaking its Focus model to create the Focus Active. Instead, there's a completely fresh look and subtle differences in drive dynamics too. We can see why budget constraints might have prevented Kia from completing the job by delivering a more unique interior, but we don't understand why buyers of mainstream XCeed variants couldn't have been given the opportunity to individualise the cabin with brighter colours and trims. The early first edition version, which unfortunately was priced beyond the reach of most XCeed buyers, showed what was possible here and emphasised what we would see as a missed opportunity to create a cabin for this car you could really enjoy living with. There are a couple of small safety omissions too that we'd have liked to have seen fitted across the range. A driver's knee bag and pedestrian detection for the forward collision warning system. These are our only real issues though. Otherwise, if you can afford the asking prices, there's little else not to like here. Unless, rather unreasonably, you're looking for a crossover suitable for off-road trails, or one capable of exactly matching the sharp tarmac handling you get from a lighter, lower-set conventional family hatch. Likely, XCeed buyers won't have these expectations. They'll like the looks, they'll appreciate how it's so easy to switch into this car from something more ordinary, and they'll value the long 7-year warranty. In short, if you're shopping for this kind of car, there are plenty of reasons why you might want this one.